welcome to Powerful Couple Journey, where we show you our day-to-day lives here in the US, and we are on our
This is part 2 of our video series we're doing on this.
question. If your J1 waiver status is case on hold and your I-485 is being actively reviewed by the USCIS, is it most likely you get approved or denied?
I think we went through this, right? And I remember this vividly. Your case was on hold for quite a while, and we got an approval. So what that means is, if you see that if your I-612 is on hold while they're reviewing the I-485, that is actually a good sign, because that means that you have compelled them to take a close look at your case, and they see things that are encouraging to them that your marriage is legitimate, that there would be a hardship on your spouse if you would have to go back and fulfill that 2-year rule. And it's also a good sign that you're definitely going to get an approval. If you were to receive like a denial at that stage, that would definitely be a bad sign. But the fact that it says case on hold and while they're actively reviewing that I-485, that's always going to be an encouraging sign.
Yes, it is. And based on our case, we got case on hold because they are looking for the DS-335, which is the opinion from the Department of State, and it took us 15 months before we got a favorable recommendation. And after a week of having a favorable recommendation, they approved my I-612. So hold on to that case on hold, and it will be approved soon.
You have to remember, you're dealing with government entities here. You've got 2 big ones you're dealing with: the USCIS, which is the Immigration Services, and the Department of State, which is they handle things like Homeland Security, things like that. So these 2 giant agencies, they don't communicate particularly speedily. They have a lot of large volume of cases they're handling. So the best advice I can give you is just be patient. If it says case on hold, that's actually a good sign.
Yes. Next one. Good day. I am weighing what my options and consequences are at this point. I am on my 4th year as a J1 teacher and planning not to finish my 5th year. Married to a U.S. citizen, we are currently processing the waiver application. 1. Will I be able to continue my stay here in the United States while waiting for the waiver division? 2. Does this mean I will be restricted to go out of the country? Can't work until I have my EAD or work permit approved? So with this one right here, I will not really recommend, based on my experience, that you're not going to have to extend your J1 through your visa sponsor. The reason for that is you have to be on status.
Correct.
The time that you are filing for your I-130, I-485 concurrent filing with I-765 and I-131. It is very crucial at this point. The reason for that is you are working with your spouse, and if you would do it DIY, there are a lot of factors that you have to consider as well. Or if you have a lawyer, even the lawyer would say that you have to be on status while filing all these forms. You might not, if you don't want to be a teacher anymore and find another work, yes you can, as long as your work permit is approved. And right now work permit is good for 5 years, and it's very important that you have to remain on status, even though not as a J1, but with your I-485, since they will really give you your I-765 knowing that you have to work as well here in the United States.
That's true.
May I know how long is the processing for the work permit or EAD? Also, if anyone filed for the I-130, I-485, I-765, and I-131, is it the same time? So the process for the EAD or work permit is, first, you have to make sure, especially if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you have to file first the I-130, which my husband did online. And then we filed the I-485, concurrent filing for I-765, which is the work permit, and the I-131. Now, the very reason why we wanted to have concurrent filing is, if you file for I-485, concurrent filing with I-765 and I-131, you don't have to pay for the latter 2 forms. But if you're just gonna be sending them the I-485, which is the adjustment of status, and do separate application for the I-765 EAD and the I-131, then you're gonna pay separately. So it's better to file concurrent filing with I-485, I-765, and I-131. Now, when it comes to the processing, it took me 5 months after filing before I have my EAD on my hand. Is marrying a U.S. citizen will guarantee a J1 visa holder to stay longer despite of having 212E rule?
Well, here's what we'll say. It helps you stay longer, but you have to bear in mind that if you don't produce a compelling enough case, they're going to deny and they're going to make you go home for those 2 years. That's why it's important that you get on getting this evidence as much as you possibly can. I remember her and I, we got married in April of 2021. I filed the I-130 almost immediately. Okay, I wanted to make sure we got the ball started as fast as possible. Some people tend to procrastinate. That's the last thing you want to do. Get right on it. This process takes so long that yes, you will, get more time. And then during that time, you're going to accumulate more evidence, because when her and I had our interview finally in Jacksonville, quite a bit of time had elapsed. And one of the things, two of the most compelling things that occurred during that time was we bought a house. So now we owned a house together. And the other thing was my father helped me draw up my last will and testament. Okay, and I made her the primary beneficiary, and then in the event her and I perished together, I made my brother the contingent beneficiary. So when we went for our interview, they asked you, in addition to the evidence you already submitted to us, do you have any new evidence you want to show us? And I was like, absolutely. So I pulled out the house deed, a copy of that, the will, there was a new life insurance policy I'd made her a beneficiary on, all these new things that had elapsed during that period of time. And I think the one that she liked the most was her being the beneficiary of the will. The minute she saw that, she says, okay, I don't need to see anymore. I'm going to approve your I-130.
Yes.
So the answer to that question, to put it simply, is that yes, when you're going through the process, it is going to enable you to stay in the U.S. longer. Just bear in mind you have got to produce a compelling case to make sure you get to stay permanently, as opposed to having to go back after you've already established this whole life together. That was one of our concerns that we had, but we had faith that it would work out, because we believe that whatever God brings together, man's not going to tear apart.
Yes, and that makes the marriage work, and that makes us believe that we will get the waiver, even though we just did it DIY without any help of a personal lawyer.
That's right. The next one.
How do you do your taxes? File individually or joint filing?
Well, if you're married, do it joint filing, because guess what? That's another piece of evidence you get to show them. So if you're filing your taxes jointly, definitely submit that with your evidence as well. I think when you and I started that first year, we already had done our taxes individually because we were unmarried at that point. But that next year, we filed jointly together. We went to Jackson Hewitt or something like that. And we did it jointly, and then that was new evidence, so we submitted that new evidence. So yeah, definitely if you're married.
Question: what is your strongest argument that made you get the J1 waiver approval?
Wow, there's actually a couple good things. I'd say one of the big ones is, sometimes there's a temptation to go do the quickie marriage at the justice of the peace. Her and I didn't want to do that. We got married in a church, and the church had expectations that we were supposed to adhere to before we got married. And those expectations were, number one, we actually couldn't be living together at the same house. We were not supposed to be doing that. The second thing was we had to undergo the premarital counseling, and then we also had to have a sit down with the pastor. So we went through that whole process, and then of course we took lots of photos of the ceremony and the reception. So the fact that we got married in a church and went through all that extra work, that's a compelling thing right there. The fact that I made her the beneficiary of several things. I made her the 100% beneficiary of my 401k. I made her the 100% beneficiary of my workplace life insurance. She's the 100% beneficiary of my Primerica secondary life insurance that I got. And then I already told you a few minutes ago, I made her the primary beneficiary of my last will and testament. So I'd say the fact that she's a beneficiary on multiple accounts of mine, and the fact that we got married in a church are probably the two biggest things. Most people who are trying to run a game, they do the quick and dirty marriage at the justice of the peace, and they don't have a lot of financial commingling going on. My wife and I had the polar opposite of that. We had a lot of financial commingling, and we got married in what I thought was a very serious manner.
Yes, and to add that one up, I really went to one of a Filipino lawyer here in Central Florida, and he asked me about psychological evaluation, and I never thought that that is very heavy when it comes to your evidences. And I told him, you know what, we have an psychological evaluation from the psychiatrist slash psychologist of my husband, and we only paid like a couple of $100.
$350.
Yes.
Most expensive piece of paper, but worth it.
But it's very worth it because, like what the lawyer said, it is very important to have that, since they could really tell that the experiences of your husband will really give a hardship, most especially if they will force you or they will impose the 212E rule, home residency requirement, back to your home country. So that is also one very compelling argument that we had in our evidences rather. And also we had the language barrier, the employment, the financial hardship. That is also a very compelling reason. Again, don't just say that we only need one or two arguments. It has to be the totality of circumstances.
Correct.
Every lawyer that is helping with the J1 waiver will always tell you that the totality of circumstances has to be given in order for you to really win and get approved with your J1 waiver. Did you apply for a work permit while you are still on J1 visa or when you become out of status? So this question is for me. To answer this, yes, I applied for a work permit, which is the I-765, while I am still on status with my J1 as a teacher. The reason for that is I don't want to be out of status, since they will put two and two together. So it's better to be on status and file for your work permit. That way, if you have your work permit in your hand and you don't want to be a school teacher anymore, or if you still want to be a school teacher, and then use that and say to your HR personnel that, hey, I no longer am a J1. However, I could work now because I have a work permit. So use this one as a substitute to the ones you had on your record, and then that will help you out by, not having any problems when it comes to the status that you have here in the US. So again, it's better to be on status, work your work permit first while you are on status with your J1. Right after that, have your EAD, give to your HR, then use that as your way of saying you are able to work in the US because you have finally having a work permit. How many months will it take for the initial filing of the I-612 or I-613 in the USCIS to the Department of State giving a favorable recommendation? In our case, we filed the I-612 first way back in June of 2021. We have it in the portal with the USCIS that says online portal that case on hold. They're waiting for the advisory opinion of my DS-3035 from the Department of State. So it took a year. Then from the Department of State, it took 15 months from them. So 15 months plus 12 months is 27 months before I get my, close to 27 months before I get my favorable recommendation. So it's better to submit your I-612 first, then your DS-3035 like after 3 months. That way, if the USCIS is asking for your DS-3035, you already had that one filed through the Department of State, and it will not cause any delays. Question: did you wait for 2 years of being married before you filed the I-130?
No. I literally filed, we got married April 25th. I filed it May 17th. That's how quick I did it. There was no messing around.
Yes, and I also consider the timeline that I have. So we got married on my third year as a J1 teacher, and I know I need to have an extension. I am so careful not to tell my visa sponsor about me getting married to a U.S. citizen. There are people telling me that it's better to not tell them because they never even ask you about that status.
Right.
So it's better to keep it to yourself. That way, they're still gonna extend you for your fourth and fifth year as a J1 teacher, and then you could buy time to process your J1 waiver if that's really what's important to you, staying here in the United States with your U.S. citizen spouse.
That's right. That's why you don't dilly-dally. You get right on it.
Yes. So thank you so much for watching our part 2 series of the question and answer portion with the J1 waiver process through DIY. This is Emery Powell.
And I'm William Powell.
Thank you so much for tuning in with our channel, Powerful Couple Journey. And we are so happy that in the Facebook group that I created, J1 Waiver Helping Hands, there are also a lot of J1 teachers and other J1 visa holders that are having lots of questions, and they were being answered with fellow members that are willing to help. So if you wanted to look at that one, it's J1 Waiver Helping Hands group through Facebook. Also, if you wanted to see our customized statement of reasons, arguments, or affidavit through DIY, you can visit our website, powerfulcouplejourney.com. We have a guest area password that I'm going to put in the description below. That way, you're going to be guided, and if you are compelled to do a DIY and save a lot of money, then this is a way to go for you. So this is me again, Emery and William Powell. We are successful with our J1 waiver through DIY process.
That's right. And we're very happy with it.
Yes. Thank you so much and have a great day. God
Thank
bless.
you. Bye-bye.